The Middle Ages were a rough time. Welcome to Watch Mojo UK, and today we're counting down our picks for the top 10 totally ridiculous facts about medieval England. Before we begin, we publish new content every day, so be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. For this list, we've looked for the strangest, weirdest, and most downright disturbing trivia tidbits, many of which were missed off your standard school curriculum. Number 10. The Battle of near Hastings. Hark back to your history lessons in secondary school and chances are you'll at least know something about the famous Battle of Hastings. And if there's one thing we all know for sure, even if you've forgotten all of the rest, it's that it definitely took place in Hastings, right? Sadly, that's where you'd be wrong. There are accounts that the Normans came to the battlefield from Hastings, but the fight itself took place around 7 miles northwest of there, at a spot where you'd now find a town called Battle, which was built in memory of the moment. Number 9. Health, hygiene, and X-rated hangouts. Despite the era's reputation for being quite a grimy time, the medieval English really did believe that cleanliness was next to godliness, with the church actively encouraging people to go to public baths and building a fair few venues to house them. But the practice didn't quite achieve this soap-sudded super hygienic utopia that it might have done. In fact, far from it. Because the public bathhouses quickly emerged as a great place for prostitution, which turned the idea of bathing into a pretty sordid affair, prompting many to lay down their sponges and boycott the bathhouses altogether. Number 8. The Invention of Surnames. There was a time in history when simply having a Christian name was adequate enough, but those times were over by the end of the Middle Ages.
Got a name, do you? I have no name.
By then, not only did your contemporary peers know Bob's your uncle, but they could now surmise that Bob's your father's brother, too, because family names were finally a thing.
Ready? Yes. My name is Derek.
However, up until that time, surnames didn't exist to officially differentiate one Bob from another.
Here's an opportunity to be creative. So, meet Princess Consuela Banana Hammock.
They first crept in as a symbol of marriage between the richer folk, until eventually your average Joe became your average Joe someone, to quell the confusion.
Why is it the world never remembered the name of Johann Gambleputty, de von Ausfirm, Splendenschlitt, Krasskrenbon, Friedigedangledungle, Barstein, von Neckthresher, Applebanger.
Number 7. The St Scholastica Day Riot. Students loved themselves a drink, even back in the 1300s, but the boozing got way out of hand here. This infamous 1355 riot dusted up because 2 students from Oxford University didn't like the drinks they'd been served. But when they issued their complaints with the barman, it did not go down well. Ale was thrown, fists were flung, and a fully fledged 2-day riot broke out between the locals and the Oxford Uni attendees. It may sound like something of nothing, but almost 100 people were actually killed in the incident, and it's still spoken about today. Number 6. Criminal animals. Believe it or not, there was a point in time where animals could be put on actual trial for crimes that they'd supposedly committed, and no one would bat an eyelid. Whether it be for criminal damage or even murder, these cases would have witnesses, human witnesses that is, and sometimes even trained lawyers, all determining if Daisy the cow was guilty.
I'm sorry, buddy.
And if the animal accused was deemed at fault, they could even find themselves executed as punishment. So, remember that next time you've done something wrong and you try to blame the dog.
Whenever Mrs. Kissel breaks wind, we beat the dog.
Number 5. Trippi Bread. Want to suddenly feel thankful for modern day food hygiene standards? Because even the bread could kill you back in Middle Ages England. The problem was, when rye crops ran out, which they often did, people turned to old and mouldy rations of the stuff, which was a big mistake, as it was often contaminated with fungus which caused the potentially deadly disease ergotism. While the Black Death takes the headlines as the deadliest of medieval plagues, the bloody, blistery effects of ergotism were not for the faint of heart either. From hellish hallucinations to painful and drawn-out sickness, if your bread was bad, then your life was in danger.
What's happening? Something happening to me?
No.
Am I shaking? Am I breaking out?
Number 4. Just a trim. In medieval times, your barber wasn't always just your barber, because he could also be your surgeon.
So I've pulled together my last few pence in order to invest in this man, the barber surgeon.
Yes, those are two things that require vastly different skill sets and probably shouldn't be conducted under the same roof, but that's what makes it all the more disturbing. Barbers were often asked to amputate the limbs of anyone who found themselves injured, especially soldiers, simply because they had easy access to razors. Apparently, if you could style a beard, you could cut off an arm too. The whole process was, as you'd probably expect, unsanitary, unpredictable, and unbearably painful. Number 3. Mini cows and micro pigs. Medieval farming was drastically different to what we know now, in terms of the crops harvested, techniques used, and even the animals kept. Since scientific specified breeding hadn't started yet, the livestock tended to be quite undernourished, resulting in farm animals far smaller than what we'd expect today. For example, an adult bull would often only grow to be slightly larger than a modern whale calf. But while the thought of a farm full of miniature animals may sound adorable, the fact that none of them were especially healthy kind of undercuts the cuteness. Number 2. Roger Bacon. Plenty of people have tried to predict the future, usually unsuccessfully. So when someone manages to correctly guess it several times over, it gets pretty unsettling. According to some reports, the philosopher and friar Roger Bacon was especially gifted when it came to getting the future right. A leading figure in science and linguistics during his lifetime, he has since become shrouded in myth and mystery, mostly because his work seems to preempt the existence of cars, planes, submarines, and telescopes long before they were invented. Various modern scholars have cast some doubt over Bacon's significance, but his apparently futuristic foresight feels fairly freaky all the same. Number 1. Law and disorder. Upholding the law in medieval England was a pretty brutal business. Under the understanding that God would intervene if the accused were innocent, offenders were subjected to a trial by ordeal, which was essentially the complete opposite of today's fair trial approach. The process boiled down to a basic life or death situation. If you survived, you were innocent. If you died, you were guilty. But these scenarios weren't the easiest things to get out of alive.
So the Normans introduced certain legal refinements, such as collective punishment and trial by battle.
The trials were typically by combat, fire, water, or poison. So you either fought to the death, were burned to death, drowned, or forced to consume something that would almost certainly kill you. Ultimately, you were guilty until proven immortal, which rarely ever happened. Do you agree with our picks? Check out these other great clips from WatchMojo UK, and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.